In 1975, a baby boy named Benjamin Stacy was born in a quiet Kentucky hospital, and when the doctors saw him, they were horrified. His skin was a shocking shade of blue. This wasn't the pale, bluish tint of a baby struggling for air, but a deep, pronounced, almost plum-purple color. The medical staff was completely baffled. The baby seemed healthy otherwise, so what was going on? They ran every test they could think of, terrified they were dealing with a new, undiscovered illness or a critical heart defect that was somehow invisible to their exams. An ambulance was called to rush the tiny, blue infant 116 miles to the University of Kentucky Medical Center. For 2 frantic days, specialists put him through every test imaginable, and they came up with absolutely nothing. His vitals were normal. He was healthy. He was just blue. As the doctors prepared for a full blood transfusion, a desperate gamble for a condition they couldn't even identify, the boy's grandmother calmly stepped forward. She asked a question that would change everything. Have you ever heard of the blue Fugates of Troublesome Creek? The doctors had no idea that the answer to this medical nightmare had been hiding for over 150 years in the isolated, misty hills of Appalachia. This wasn't some new disease. It was the latest echo of a bizarre and enduring American mystery. The key to that blue baby born in 1975 isn't in a hospital at all. To find it, you have to go back, way back to 1820, in one of the most remote corners of the United States, the Appalachian Mountains of eastern Kentucky. This was a land of rugged beauty but also profound isolation. Deep valleys, known as hollers, were carved out by winding creeks, surrounded by steep hills and dense forests. The roads, if you could even call them that, were just dirt tracks that turned to mud with the slightest rain. The outside world felt a million miles away. Here, communities were small, self-sufficient, and very wary of strangers. Into this isolated world came a man named Martin Fugate. History tells us he was a French orphan who claimed a piece of land along a stream aptly named Troublesome Creek. But family legend says Martin himself was unusual. While no official record confirms it, stories passed down for generations insist his own skin had a clear blue tint. Whether he was visibly blue or not, we know for certain he carried a silent genetic secret from his unknown European ancestors, hidden deep within his blood. In this remote Kentucky hollow, Martin Fugate met and married a local woman, Elizabeth Smith. She was described as pale with fiery red hair, as pale and white as the mountain laurel that blooms every spring. And right there, in their union, the genetic lottery hit an almost impossible jackpot. Unbeknownst to them, Elizabeth also carried the exact same, incredibly rare recessive gene that Martin had. On its own, the gene was a silent passenger in their DNA. But when 2 copies came together, it was a recipe for something extraordinary. The couple settled down, built a cabin, and started a family. They had 7 children, possibly more. 4 of them were born with the same pale skin as their mother. But the other 4 were born shockingly, undeniably blue. Imagine the fear in that small, isolated cabin. In an era without modern medicine, in a place steeped in superstition, what could they possibly have thought? Was it a curse? A bad omen? They had no way of knowing they were the founders of a genetic dynasty that would become both a local legend and a medical puzzle, the Blue People of Kentucky. Their isolation, once just a fact of life, was now the very thing that would seal their family's strange, blue fate for the next 150 years. The birth of Martin and Elizabeth's blue children was just the beginning. For the next century and a half, the Fugate family name was tied to one thing, the color of their skin. What began as a private family matter soon became a regional legend, wrapped in mystery and fear. The same geography that drew Martin to Troublesome Creek now became a genetic prison, locking the family and their unique gene into a cycle of isolation and intermarriage. Back in the 19th and early 20th centuries, life in the Appalachian hollers was incredibly insular. With no real roads, and the railroad not reaching these deep valleys until the 1910s, the gene pool was tiny. People married their neighbors, who were often their cousins. The Fugates were no different. They married into other local families, the Combses, the Smiths, the Richies, the Stasis, and often, they married each other. One of Martin's Blue's sons, Zachariah, married his own aunt. It wasn't that they didn't care about social norms, it was simply the reality of their profound isolation. As a result, the recessive gene for blue skin, which should have eventually vanished into the wider population, was instead concentrated and passed down again and again. Generation after generation, blue children were born. The family became a living legend, whispered about in nearby towns as the Blue People of Troublesome Creek. For the Fugates, this wasn't a fascinating quirk. It was a heavy burden. They were treated as outcasts, their blue skin often seen as a sign of something sinister in a culture full of superstition. Their complexion wasn't a soft, angelic blue, it was often a dark, bruised, and unsettling color. A local nurse who knew the family described Luna Fugate, the great-grandmother of baby Benjamin, in haunting terms. She said Luna was bluish all over, and that her lips were as dark as a bruise. She called her as blue a woman as I ever saw. Imagine living your entire life with skin the color of a deep contusion. This difference made them targets of fear and suspicion, causing the family to become even more reclusive. Though many lived long, healthy lives, often into their 80s and 90s, they did so under a constant shadow. And they carried another secret, one you could only see if you drew their blood. It wasn't red. It was a dark, shocking, chocolate brown. For over a century, the Fugates lived with this curse, with no explanation and no escape, until the world of modern science finally came looking for them. So, what was actually happening to the Fugate family? The curse that haunted them for generations wasn't supernatural at all. It was a specific, and thankfully treatable, medical condition called Methemoglobinemia. To get it, you need a quick crash course on how blood works. Our blood is red because of a protein called hemoglobin. Think of hemoglobin as a massive fleet of delivery trucks. Each truck has an iron atom that lets it grab onto oxygen in our lungs. These trucks then race through our bloodstream, delivering oxygen to our entire body. That's what gives healthy, oxygenated blood its bright red color and what gives our skin a pinkish hue. Normally, the iron in our hemoglobin is in a state that allows it to carry oxygen. But sometimes, a small amount, usually less than 1%, gets converted into an abnormal form called methemoglobin. In this state, the iron can't bind to oxygen. It's a broken delivery truck. Because it can't carry oxygen, methemoglobin isn't bright red, it's a dark, brownish blue. This is why the Fugates' blood was that shocking chocolate brown color. In a healthy person, the body has a defense mechanism. An enzyme called cytochrome B5 reductase works like a team of mechanics, constantly fixing the broken trucks and converting methemoglobin back into useful hemoglobin. And this is where we find the heart of the Fugates' problem. Due to a random genetic mutation, both Martin Fugate and Elizabeth Smith carried a faulty gene, the one that holds the instructions for producing that crucial enzyme. Since it's a recessive gene, having just one bad copy, like Elizabeth, causes no problems. Her body still made enough of the enzyme to keep everything in check. Think of it like needing 2 instruction manuals to build something. As long as you have one good manual, you can figure it out. But the Fugate children who were born blue got a bad manual from both parents. Their bodies couldn't produce enough of the enzyme. Without this team of mechanics, the useless, blue-colored methemoglobin started to build up in their blood. Instead of the normal 1%, the Fugates had levels between 10% and 20%. At these levels, the condition isn't dangerous, but it has one very dramatic side effect. The dark, bluish-brown color of their blood became so concentrated that it overpowered the red of their normal hemoglobin. This resulted in cyanosis, where the skin and lips take on a distinct blue hue. They weren't blue on the surface, the blue was radiating from within. The medical nightmare finally had a scientific explanation. Now, it just needed a hero. For decades, the Blue People were just a local legend, a complete mystery to the outside world. That all changed in the 1960s, thanks to the curiosity of one man, Dr. Madison Cawen III, a young hematologist at the University of Kentucky. Dr. Cawen was fascinated by blood cells, once saying, "They always looked beautiful to me." So when he started hearing whispers of entire families living deep in the mountains with blue skin, he knew he had to investigate. A nurse named Ruth Pendergrass, who worked closer to Fugate territory, had actually met some of the family members and was determined to help them. She teamed up with Dr. Cawen, and together, they set out to find the blue people. It wasn't easy. Dr. Cawen spent months, tromping around the hills, navigating the rugged terrain and the deep-seated mistrust many locals had for outsiders. His search eventually led him to a small cabin, where he met Patrick and Rachel Ritchie, a brother and sister who were direct descendants of the original Fugates. They were, by all accounts, bluer than hell. They were embarrassed by their condition, but they were also desperate for answers, so they let the strange doctor from the city examine them. First, Dr. Cawen ruled out the obvious, heart or lung disease. He found them to be perfectly healthy. The mystery deepened. Then he drew their blood, and what he saw confirmed the legends. In the vial, it was a dark, almost blackish brown. When he exposed a drop to the air, it didn't bloom into a bright red like normal blood. It stayed stubbornly dark. Back in his lab, Dr. Cawen hit one dead end after another. He suspected it was a form of hereditary methemoglobinemia, and a paper he found on a similar case in native Alaskans pointed to an enzyme deficiency. He believed the Fugates had the same problem. To prove it, he had to chart the family's entire genetic history. He drove the long 8-hour round trip between his lab and their homes countless times, drawing blood and meticulously piecing together the family tree. His research finally revealed the clear recessive inheritance pattern and isolated the cause, a massive deficiency in the enzyme now known as cytochrome B5 reductase. He had found the what and the why. But for Dr. Cawen, that wasn't enough. He wasn't just a researcher, he was a doctor. His quest wasn't just to understand the blue people, it was to cure them. And the solution he landed on was as counterintuitive as it was brilliant. Having solved the mystery, Dr. Cawen shifted his focus from diagnosis to treatment. He knew the body had a backup pathway for dealing with methemoglobin, and he found research suggesting it could be kickstarted by a specific chemical. The perfect antidote, he believed, was a simple dye known as methylene blue. Think about the irony. He was going to cure the blue people, by injecting them with a blue dye. When he first explained the idea to the Ritchie family, they thought he was crazy. But they trusted the doctor who had worked so hard to help them, and they agreed to try. Dr. Cawen drove back to Patrick and Rachel's home for the moment of truth. The air must have been thick with hope and anxiety. For Patrick and Rachel, this was a chance to finally shed a burden they had carried their entire lives. Dr. Cawen prepared 2 syringes, each with 100 milligrams of the vibrant blue dye. He injected Patrick. Then Rachel. They waited. And then, it happened. Fast. Within just a few minutes, a stunning transformation began. The deep, purplish-blue color that had defined their existence started to fade. A healthy, pinkish flush spread across their skin. Nurse Pendergrass, watching in amazement, later recalled, they changed colors. It was really something exciting to see. In a matter of minutes, the curse was broken. Dr. Cawen described the moment with palpable emotion. For the first time in their lives, they were pink. They were delighted. Imagine that. Seeing your true skin color for the very first time as an adult. Looking at your sibling and seeing them, really seeing them, without the blue mask that had always defined them. The shame and stigma that had haunted their family for over a century were washed away by a simple chemical reaction. The cure, thankfully, didn't require constant injections. Dr. Cawen gave the family a supply of methylene blue tablets, a simple pill to be taken daily. The nightmare was over. Science had not only explained the mystery, it had delivered a miracle. The incredible story of the Blue People of Kentucky is a powerful saga about genetics, isolation, and scientific discovery. It started with a 1 in a million genetic coincidence on the banks of Troublesome Creek and was carried for 150 years by the unforgiving geography of Appalachia. The Fugate family lived under the shadow of a curse, a visible mark that made them objects of fear and superstition. But their story is also a powerful reminder of what human curiosity and compassion can achieve. Dr. Madison Cawein's relentless quest for answers turned a medical nightmare into a treatable condition. He replaced folklore with facts and stigma with science. And what about that blue baby boy, Benjamin Stacy? His blue skin faded to a normal color within a few months. Thanks to Dr. Cawein's work years earlier, the doctors knew exactly what was happening. He grew up healthy and is widely believed to be the last known descendant of the Fugates to be born with that telltale blue skin. Today, the gene is surely still out there, carried by descendants, but it has been so diluted into the general population that the odds of it reappearing are astronomically low. The era of the blue people of Kentucky is over, leaving behind one of history's most remarkable medical tales. If you thought this story was as fascinating as we did, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We love exploring the strange and surprising intersection of science and the human experience, and we have many more nightmares to uncover.